Welcome, everybody. Welcome. It's another week of Benevolent Banter, a show where we actually talk to some of the coolest humans on the planet just about, well, not just about, but about some pretty deep topics, I think, because I think the world needs a few more conversations that matter. So today I have Jerry, my friend here, who I am going to allow to introduce himself because I feel like your introduction of yourself is going to be much better than anything I can do. So over to you, Jerry.
Well, I'm incredibly privileged to be here, Cassie, as a client first and a friend and a mentor. You are a guiding light for me as well, so thank you for that. Crikey, I've done many things, and throughout that, I've been fascinated by the way that human beings respond to different circumstances, by the sheer magic we can create when we work together, and I think it takes certain kinds of situations to bring out the best in us.
Yeah.
And I've seen that in my career in the military in the UK, and I've seen it in my career in business working in the US, through Asia and Australia. You know, it's easy to believe that our default state is competitive and aggressive and dog eat dog, and it's not. You know, we know when something bad happens, a natural disaster, a tragedy like in Christchurch here, it's a leveler.
Yeah.
People come together, and our desire for belonging and our desire to be kind and to support each other just comes to the fore. And then when we go back to what we mistakenly call perhaps our normal lives, and we slot back into this individuated, self-oriented existence where, you know, external material status and the shiny portrait we put over social media is how we measure ourselves. And I don't think that's healthy, and it certainly isn't going to help us rebalance the world. So my mission in life, and that probably is a bit of defining who I am, is to inspire community, and I do that by working with businesses, both with other partners and individually, to help businesses understand the commercial benefits and the human benefits of creating a community structure within your organization. And a community is simply a systemized structure that ensures the prosperity, not just financial, of the whole organism by enabling the prosperity of every member within.
Wow. That's pretty deep. I just think for everybody watching, I need to be completely open, honest, and transparent here. You know those people in life that you can remember meeting them for the first time. You're one of those for me, Jerry. I think I was at the time working with Air New Zealand, and you were at one of our creative agencies, and you walked into the room, and you just had this vibration that was on a different level with somebody else. And I remember we locked eyes, and from that point, it was like, this dude, this is one of my brothers. This is a soul light that shines. So I want to crack into what you're saying there. Before we started recording, we were talking about the measure you just mentioned, how we measure ourselves in this world of social media, in this world of clutter and feeling like we're being swallowed up, and that we don't have time for ourselves anymore.
That's a huge point, and the word swallow is very graphic for me.
Yeah.
In a sociological sense, people, certainly if you like in what we like to call first world societies, are dealing with increasing levels of pressure. There's the external pressures to bring in an income, to pay the mortgage, to educate the kids. even just to get through each day, to get up in the morning against the clock, go to the shower, do our ablutions, get the same for the kids, etc., and get to work on time with a fresh mind, and I would like to think an open heart. It's more like, whew.
Yeah, you sit down at your desk and you go, "Oh, I'm done for the day,"
yeah.
but actually you're just starting.
And I mean, for those who remember the old film with Bill Murray, we go through our own particular versions of Groundhog Day, pardon me. And then we're also asked to be happy and to be well. So that's the beginning of the layer of tensions. And then if we look into, say, take business leadership, business is going through a period of pervasive, constant change. There is the change in the technologies around my industry. We've got categories changing shape. We've got human beings behaving very differently. And as a leader, I'm expected to not just run the day-to-day, but actually anticipate and respond to what's going to come down next month, next year, next decade. There are huge amounts of pressures on people in those roles.
Like crystal ball reading, isn't it?
It is. And add to that, I've also now got to be the custodian, caretaker, mentor, teacher of a group of human beings.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a different topic, I think, but we have an issue with leadership in Australasia where senior people, both male and female, spend 10 years as an engineer, as an accountant, as a sales manager, whatever, and then suddenly you're catapulted into, you're now general manager, or you're managing director. And apply your experience in working the books and making things work to making human beings work and maintain the business performance.
That's right.
But it doesn't work like that.
No.
People are different. We're sentient creatures driven by our emotions. We know customers make decisions by what Daniel Kahneman calls fast thinking, the emotional ricochet. And then we go back. Slow thinking is, how do I rationalize the fact that I'm supposed to buy a family wagon, I bought a 2-door coupe. How do I rationalize that?
That's the post-rationalization of the midlife crisis car.
People everywhere, both as customers and employees and ordinary creatures, make decisions usually emotionally. And that means we're driven by what seems to matter to us. And increasingly, that means what's worrying me, what are my fears. I'm quite shocked how many people I come across here are reluctant to name what I call the life of my longing. How do you want your life to look? And what tends to come out first, and this is very general, is a list of expectations and needs that others have of me.
Correct.
Now, as a parent, as a dad, that is my most important role. I have 3 amazing growing children, and they teach me. So naturally, I put their needs first. But I've come to realize the hard way that if I am healthier and happier and fulfilled inside, I'm a better dad.
Totally. It's the fulfillment thing. I don't know if it's a generational thing. I think it's just a humanity thing right now. But there's this thing that's happening out in the world called the Great Millennial Unraveling.
Yes.
Where folks of my generation especially, we are overwhelmed by tiny, micro decisions. I can tell you where I want to be in 10 years. I can plan out the biggest strategic brand piece for a big organization. But if you ask me what's for dinner, I melt down. And I think it goes down to that society does. You need to have everything on the go, right? Your profession is inextricably linked to who you are now. Your title and who you are. When you start to unpair that, when you start to peel back the layers to that life of your longing, and you go, actually, I maybe just want to be a barista, serve people coffee, have good chats, and go on a long walk, and that would be my perfect life.
Yeah.
And you have people look at you and go, you're nuts. You go, okay, maybe my idea of happiness isn't right. So then you start to, overthink and over-rationalize and create more anxieties. How do we find that time? How do we make that time to understand who we are? I know for me, it's only been in the last 3 years of my life that I've even stopped long enough to go, what are my actual values?
Yeah.
What do I live by? There's a woman I work with named Leslie who I respect her so much because she will come out in hard conversations and go, my values are.
Yes.
And she will go, I believe in fairness, and what's happening right now is not meeting my values. And having people know their values so strongly makes me go, oh my God. I'm
isn't that
still
wonderful?
on a journey. Wow.
Isn't it? The honesty is breathtaking when
Yeah.
somebody can actually say, what drives me and what I stand for is this. And again, looking objectively across the last 60, 70 years, we came out of the World War II into the boomer generation, which really I think was an epoch of acquirement and achievement. How do I
Yes.
prove my worth? And there's a whole bunch of different rationales for that. But now, Gen Y, Gen X, Gen Z, and we're not even, I think, sure how to approach Generation Alpha, the kids that are
Yeah.
just born and will be born. But millennials, the eldest millennials are now in senior business roles.
Yeah.
So you're bringing your values, your decision criteria, and your priorities into making decisions that impact large organizations.
Correct.
And that's creating a very quiet seismic shift.
It's a huge tug, and from all of the folks that I know that are kind of, so somebody put it to me a few years ago. They said, look, the 4s and 5s are becoming the 3s and the 2s, soon to
Yeah.
become the 1s in that
Yeah.
typical hierarchical situation. But we had the parents that were the boomers and
Yeah.
that acquire
Yeah.
and achieve. But at the same time, our parents said, but be what you want, be happy.
Yeah.
How do you balance the acquire and achieve with the be happy if you don't want the stuff anymore?
Yeah.
So you go into work and leadership and you go, I really want to nurture people, but the business is being run by a primacy of profit.
Again, that's something I think which the world is now aware of. The Davos Manifesto, obviously in the World Economic Forum, it's a gathering of the extreme elite, but it has some influence. And the update they released in December actually very clearly said the purpose of a company now is to leave the world in a better state and to be responsible. And this goes back to Professor Ed Freeman's stakeholder theory. Freeman was this wonderful afro-haired, taekwondo doing professor of business. He's still around, but he was saying 13 years ago, a business has to be aware of its impact on every single stakeholder whose lives we touch in tiny and massive ways.
Yeah.
And that's a complete antithesis, if you like, to the old, dare I say, capitalist view that a business leverages labor to service customers to create wealth for shareholders.
Yeah.
So there's been a complete flipping of that model. And that doesn't mean, business still has to make profit.
Of course it does.
And sustainability is environment, community, people, and the economy that allows us to make progress.
That's
But
right.
what we're seeing, I think, is an awakening of I call essential human value, the ability and need we want to know each other, be honest with each other, and to create bonds that might last for a week, they might last a lifetime. But again, there's a lot of research which shows that young people today actually demand that businesses be more human. They demand that businesses be genuine, as in do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
Don't lie.
Just throw the word around.
Exactly.
We're genuine and authentic.
But also be transparent. If something goes wrong, own it.
That's right.
And because today, especially with connectivity, saying nothing equates to doing nothing.
That's right.
The reality is often different. But if I don't say what I'm doing, excuse me, the world believes I'm doing nothing. But let's bring this back. I mean, where we started talking is around humanity and kindness.
Yeah.
And we talked about what happens when a business rebuilds itself as a community, which is where we the tribe, we the whānau are working together towards a common goal to achieve common impacts through which we all benefit.
That's right.
But it's incredibly hard to lead a community if I'm not kind to myself. And again, we have a disease of workaholism. There's an American guy, I've forgotten his name, he's a doctor, ex-military, who talks of the epidemic of poor sleep that we're having.
Yes.
And again, my background in the military, excuse me, and as an alpha male, I can operate amazingly well on half an hour's sleep, night after night. Well, that's not true. You know that pharmacologically, depriving ourselves of sleep actually changes our brain function, our tissue structure shifts, our musculature and our blood chemistry changes. It does damage. So we have this academy of achievement among business leaders. I only got 3 hours sleep because I was doing the report.
Yeah.
I only this. And yes, sometimes that has to happen. It's how we get things
It's
done.
an ebb and a flow, isn't it?
But if it becomes a default setting, I think we are doing damage to ourselves and sending the wrong example to those who look to us for leadership. And leadership is a service role.
Of course it is.
Management is doing shit. Leadership is caretaking. And I cannot take care of you and you and you if I don't take care of myself.
So how do we, and you work a lot in this space too, how do we make that seismic shift into the, because let's be honest, the cult of busy is alive and well, right? People running from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting and then working until midnight because so many meetings about meetings were going on during the day. And then, you know, nannies are taking care of kids and we're not making memories with our families. And we're doing what we talked about earlier, which is living Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
Every single day. And there are sometimes the thing that amazes me about like people who are present is they can go, oh, I remember in 2006 in February, I did a thing. I'm like, I somehow lost 20 years.
Yes.
And I think it has been my corporate years because it is just the same. Get up, brush your teeth, have a shower, get the kid to school, go to work, wash, rinse, repeat. And it's only been recently where I personally have been doing a lot of the reading on how to maintain a healthy relationship with myself.
Yeah.
So that I can be in much better service to others. How do we do that? How do we make this shift happen?
Nothing happens quickly, and as somebody who doesn't have a patience bone, I find that very frustrating. The work that I'm involved in as an organizational coach and increasingly as a leadership coach centers very strongly on knowing yourself. And a lot of us have raced through life or trundled through life avoiding the opportunity to become intimate with who we actually are.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's workaholism, whether it's sports obsession, whether it's religion, and they're all very valid, but they often create distractions to avoid doing the basic work that we need to do. And I can't think of a single leader in any of my manifestations that I really respected who hasn't had the ability to show himself or herself genuinely, to be vulnerable, to demonstrate genuine empathy and compassion, but also to lead firmly and take the hard decisions, and sometimes experience pain, excuse me,
totally.
for doing that.
Yeah.
So where it starts for what I do, it's a very simple framework that we teach, which is out of basic psychology, and it's based on 4 pillars. The first pillar is self-accountability. Mm-hmm. Don't lie to myself. If I promise myself something, whether it's an actual ritual or simply I'm going to be better or whatever, do it.
Yeah.
The second one is congruence. Follow through with others on the same way. If I say I'm going to meet you at 12 o'clock on Friday to continue the conversation because I've got to go now to a meeting, I will be there. And that matters so much to people. The third pillar is presence. Be aware of the presence, how I feel in a room. As a big bloke, I have made mistakes walking into a meeting where the audience is mainly women. I've been too loud, I've been too masculine, I haven't listened enough. And the fourth pillar is resilience. What is my resilience? Got 100K in the bank, I'm resilient. But if the bank goes down, I'm not so resilient. So my resilience shifts based on external circumstance and internal, my own self-story. So the work we do with leaders in different levels begins with getting to know yourself. Who are you? And there's a lovely process which Simon Sinek, I'm sure people will know out there, has gifted the world around find your why.
Yeah.
And so we work with that. We also work with a man named Mac McCartney from the UK, who's a business associate of ours. And he challenges us to answer 3 questions. And I'm sure Mac won't mind me repeating these. The first one is, what do I profoundly, deeply love?
Yeah.
What goes to the core of my being? The second one is trickier. What are my deepest, most profound gifts? What do I have in me, which is of value to something external? And the third is, what are my deepest, most profound responsibilities? What do I have a right, what do I inherently value enough to stand up for?
Yeah.
So the combination of find your why and that leads us to a place with everybody that goes, you know what? this is what's formed me. And we talk a lot about early stories. And when I was young, what events, what meetings, what interactions stay with me? What shaped me? What made me into the creature I am today?
Yeah.
Because there is always a connection between what happened when we were 9, 10, 11, 12, through to late teens, early 20s, to how we present to the world now.
100%. I learned that in therapy.
Well, I mean,
It's a very expensive way to know myself, but it was worth every penny in the end.
Yeah, I mean, I've been through the journey as well.
Yeah.
But it's both beautiful and sometimes quite shocking to see what happens when a person in their 40s or 50s realizes they've actually been denying this.
That's right.
And turning away from it. And if you like, sometimes we call it the mask or the mythical me. The me that I want to be, and I'm carrying it forward in front of me day in, day out. But actually, it's not me. And smart young people know that.
Isn't it amazing to meet young people who are so aware of what drives them and of who they are?
Yeah.
Sometimes I look at people in their teens and their 20s. I've got two nieces who are 22 and 17, and these girls know themselves.
Yes.
And I just go, wow. If only I'd been able to walk through the world at that young age and have known myself that well.
Yeah.
Where, what would be different? I wouldn't change a thing looking back, but wow. What liberation.
But the consequence of that is that I expect those people who lead me, who expect me to respect them, to follow them, excuse me, to also know themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, my throat's a bit rough.
Which is an interesting thing, isn't it? Because that is one thing I know in my own personal career journey through, quite a few big businesses. I've never looked at the leaders as these mythical beings because of their titles. Yeah. Whereas other people walk into a room and if somebody's got the word chief in front of their title, they will fall over fawn. And if they said the sky's purple, they'll go out and proselytize and tell everybody the sky's purple. And I probably, maybe it's being on that cusp of millennialism, zennial, right?
Oh,
and my mind has always just been, prove it to me.
And we're seeing a shift. The old model was appointed leadership. So-and-so has been there for long enough. It's time we gave him or her a promotion, a title. There you're now in charge. The model which works better now is elected leadership. You look at how somebody interacts with their peers and their colleagues, and it's not hard to tell who naturally commands a degree of respect or empathy or bonds, who shows genuine caring and compassion for those around them. And in some careers, least of all the military, they create exercises and the instructors watch how people behave. And they nail the heroes who want to do it on their own, and they nail the ones who realize that we are stronger together.
Yeah.
And that's such a metaphor for business today. Again, the work that we're doing is to help businesses reformat themselves as a community. It doesn't require re-engineering of hierarchy or structure necessarily, but it does require a re-evaluating of why we're here and how we can all be here together.
Do you find a lot of leaders are open to that? I'd imagine there's some openness because you're doing it, but at what level? Is there pushback?
Yes, there is. I think Australasia as a region, we are a long way behind Northern Europe. We're a long way behind even parts of the US and Canada, partly because I think we're a small economy. We have very immediate priorities. We have a lower margin economy, so businesses have to work harder to stay afloat, let alone make progress. Yeah. But increasingly, we're having conversations with people going, well, how do we do this? And the biggest questions are the need to be environmentally responsible. And we've worked with organizations in very, if you like, damaging contexts across the last 3 or 4 years. And we're working with companies who are preparing to shape-shift where they can be more environmentally responsible. But the biggest question is, how do I do it? What will it cost and what's the risk? Yeah. And the same thing applies to the human factor. I've got a hierarchical culture. I've got a default culture where the biggest titles, the biggest egos are the ones that basically form the culture.
Yes.
And when that happens, the quiet ones, the empaths, the introverts, the thinkers, quite apart from some of the, the ethnicities where they don't respond well to a loud culture, they melt away. And employee churn in this country continues to grow. Some of it is restlessness. Some of it's, again, it's the millennial restlessness. A lot of it is because women and men are saying, I don't have a future here because, or I don't look forward to a future here because what matters to me is not coming down from the leaders. So there is a growing imperative for business to be sustainable environmentally and in human terms, and also create the commercial benefits that we to do as well.
Yeah.
But where we started this is, for that to really happen, it's got to start with the leaders.
Yeah.
And so when we meet somebody and we ask a lot of questions and listen a lot around, well, what is your life like? How do you deal with the pressures that you have? How do you respond to extremes of tiredness and exhaustion?
Yeah.
And there's some lovely stories around how people have dealt with that. There's a man named Brother David Steindl-Rast, who's an Austrian Benedictine monk who does a lot of speaking on the corporate. He's an amazing man. He speaks to corporates, and he was asked by a CEO, I think, or a team of CEOs a while ago, how do we manage exhaustion? We're all exhausted. The entire leadership is drained from the last 3, 4, 5 years of competition, mergers, stress, etc.
Yeah.
We're knackered. And David said something amazing. He said, the antidote to exhaustion is not always rest, but it is always wholeheartedness.
That's one to chew on for a little while.
So if I am wholeheartedly in my role and in my being, and that's a big fluffy word, it's easier for me to generate the energy.
Yeah.
But in order to be wholehearted, I must know myself. Yes, I enjoy certain things, but enjoyment is not fulfillment. Enjoyment can lead to fulfillment. Fulfillment and contentment are far deeper, subtler. I think actually fulfillment is a little bit like a panther. It stalks quietly, imperceptibly, silently. And when it's there and wants it to know it's there, you feel it.
Oh, I
But
felt
until
it.
then,
I felt it earlier this week, let me tell you. Yeah.
We plod along. Am I happy? Well, when I have dinner, I'll be happy. When I can watch Netflix, I'll be happy. You know?
Yeah.
But
does that go back to presence? Because it's that inattainable happiness.
Yeah.
And you say, it stalks like a panther. Fulfillment. Is it slowing down enough for that panther to catch you?
Absolutely. Well, it's taking the time to look inward.
Yeah.
And again, as part of the coaching, we talk of the value of quiet time, personal time. Now, quiet time is often when the voices and fears start chattering. I mean, I know what it's like to wake up at 4 a.m. and go, oh my God, because things aren't going well.
Holy shit.
So that's one side of the quiet time story. The other time is intentionally creating 5 3-minute breaks in my day to go, what's happening inside me?
Yeah.
Am I being accountable to myself? Am I
Yeah.
being congruent
Yeah.
to those who look to me? Am I aware of my presence? Even if I'm grumpy.
Yep.
Actually, sometimes I will say, I'm sorry, I'm feeling quite short-tempered today, so I apologize if.
Quite often we do those little check-ins, and I find in cultures that are safe enough, and that's another thing that we haven't really touched upon is like the safety that people need to feel to be vulnerable or to be that honest. That's usually when I go into a business, the first thing I do with my teams is say, we've just met, it's going to take 6 months, but after 6 months, we're going to be family because we're going to talk to each other, we're going to forgive each other, and we're just going to be all in.
Yeah.
And but it'll take a while. And I think for me, it's the safety of coming into an office in the morning and checking in. How was your night? How are you? You didn't sleep well. Your kids are sick. Something's happening back home. You've lost somebody in your life. And then once people start to understand that, they're like, oh, Jerry's fine. He's just had a really rough night. We're going to give him a little extra love. And this is how we build culture. But I've been told so many times in my career that kindness is equitable with weakness. And I've even more recently had people starting to tell me, have you seen this thing where niceness and kindness should be pulled apart? And I'm like, yeah, sometimes, but you can be nice and be kind as well. They don't always have to stay
Yeah.
together. How do we look at a culture that equates kindness with weakness, especially when you look at, hypermasculinity in our
Yeah.
culture and men who are suffering at huge rates?
Well, and again, I feel a bit abashed as a middle-aged, middle-class white guy even talking about this, but we still have in some businesses a management culture of just get it done and stop complaining.
I think I unplugged this. Can you hear us, Lakshana?
I can hear you guys.
Yeah, just get it done. Don't bring me your tears. Just go out there and get on with it. And when you get home, you can unload.
Yeah.
And that it's quite freakish how often the leader who behaves that way is hurting themselves.
Right.
And their inability to deal with their own pain, their suffering, their self-story means they bring this brittle autocracy to those that they are supposed to lead and grow, and today's young people don't just see it, they won't tolerate it.
Yeah.
So they leave or they just shut down, and there are shells within companies. They look like living, breathing women and men, but they're not. They're just shells. Their body is there, their hands are on the keyboard, but their spirit, their mind is millions of miles away because they have not felt the safety, they have not felt the collegiality, and they don't feel they're going to grow. I'm amazed it's taken this many generations for us to realize that we want meaning from work.
It's an interesting conundrum for me. Even the fact that when you do slow down to think through what work
Yeah.
means, quote fingers, we wake up at home with our loved ones, our beloveds, and then we all leave the house and go different directions. Our children go to school, we go to work, we spend so much time with people we don't know, and we've just randomly been thrown together with. And but we inherently want that. We want that connection. I personally am, for a long time just calling out for a creative outlet.
Yeah.
Or a way to understand the world and then take the goodness inherent in big organizations, because I truly believe big organizations can change the world for the better. I 110% believe that. But how do we put all of this together and have it make sense? Is it fair for us and younger generations to put that onto businesses, to say we need to find that meaning, and
Well,
it
my
has to be
answer
at
to
work?
that is it's not only fair, it's necessary.
Nice.
The world is in transition, and we're putting different directions. We have stress, worry, concern, damage, climate change, species dying out. We have people waking up, people demanding more, and in the middle we have business as an entity, which is the most organized and potent force for change on the face of the earth, more than governments, more than local communities. And yes, all of us have our voice, and I would say to anybody, your voice is your most important tool, followed by your actions. But when a business behaves as a community and genuinely elevates the well-being, emotional, mental, and if possibly physical of all employees, every case study shows that they make more money.
Of course.
Productivity goes up to by 47% in some cases. Bottom line, 23, 28%. Direct bottom line impact. Obviously, if I'm happy and I'm serving customers, the customer experience is going to improve.
That's right.
But there are still some organizational cultures that either resist making the connection or cannot see the connection.
Yeah. Or don't understand how to get there.
So exactly. So when we coach and start with leaders, it begins with, well, how well do you know yourself? And there's another lovely aphorism that I cannot create a better me without accepting the broken me.
Yeah.
Now, the word broken is it's one of those horrible therapy words, but there's a truth in that.
Of course.
I mean, imagine a manager in a factory out looking over the factory floor with 80 people working. Every single person there is living their own story.
That's right.
They've
That's
all
right.
got pressures, worries, concerns, joys, hopes, dreams. And actually, making your bottom line grow is not
It's
and
not
should not be
no.
the most important thing in their
Yeah.
life. So if we can create a formula whereby we enable them to, whether it's live a better or transfer their self-story
Yes.
into something that aligns with the impact we want to have on the world with our business. And that impact is both financial, social, and
Spiritual,
environmental.
even spiritual.
Yeah,
Creative.
exactly. And there's a lovely man called Raj Sisodia in the US. Raj champions business as a healing organization. Again, healing's a trigger word.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not here to heal people. He has a beautiful YouTube and TED talk called The Healing Organization. And he is a wise professor of business on a global basis,
Wow.
and a founder of Conscious Capitalism. And he talks about today, CEOs have a responsibility to be aware what your people are going through.
That's right.
Not always in micro terms, but the business has the ability to elevate and transform people's lives. If we do that, those employees become even more engaged, more passionate, and crucially,
Inside
they
the business
open up
and
to each
outside.
other. Exactly.
That's right. That's right. And that's where the community aspect comes in, because
Yeah.
you know when you're in a really good work situation, when people want to spend time with each other
Yeah.
outside of work. I've worked in plenty of places where everyone goes, we are not having a drink on a Friday night because I spend all week with you people. Why would I want to do that?
Yeah.
And in other places where you're like, oh my God, it's Friday night. Let's go out. Oh, do
Yeah.
you want to go for a walk on the beach on the weekends? Hey, did you see this? How's your mom doing? Like all of those things. You can tell when there's a community culture
Yeah.
the second you walk
Yeah.
into a business. And it's amazing to me how starkly different businesses can be.
And externally, we can now see the ones that are struggling with that. Internally, it's immediately obvious.
Yeah.
And all the case studies and our own personal experience that a business that makes this shift, innovation goes up. And you know, and New Zealand's innovation ranking has been declining for years now, and in part because somebody I won't name, but I really actually respect her, said because business is still run by a traditionally minded cartel
Yeah.
of men, and
Yeah.
that's very polarizing. But I think there's some truth in it. So when we create an atmosphere of purpose, of aligned values,
Yes.
culture, and care, it's easier to be creative. Being creative is an act of courage.
Of course it
You know,
is.
and I work with
Scary.
people who say, I'm not creative. Actually, we all have the equipment to be imaginative. And more than that, it's actually good for us. You know, science has found that singing changes our brain chemistry. Dancing actually reduces the effects of age. You know?
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So all of these things are the health tonics that keep on giving. And when a business leads by taking the time to invest in understanding what we're looking for, because obviously people have different needs in tribes.
Yeah.
Take
Yep.
the time to find out what your people actually hunger for.
Yeah.
What small or not so small part can the business play whilst accomplishing its commercial goals in delivering that?
So 2-minute dance parties are what we need every morning.
Yeah.
Cool.
Bring people together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Encourage self-kindness. Encourage
Yeah.
taking the time to get to know yourself. And if a leader takes himself or herself away and goes, you know what? I've got stuff to address and I've got to admit it. And I'm proud of what I do, but I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
You know, there's humanity there.
I love that. There is no greater leveler for me when it comes to the humanity aspect of leaders and of trusting a leader, as when somebody says, I am not perfect because, or I'm feeling this way because, and is just open instead of reading from a script that has been perfectly transcribed and gone through PR and HR and all of the resources you can imagine and tell you it's like that's not even that person's voice.
Yeah.
When you don't understand a person's voice, how do you trust them as a leader or even as a peer?
Well,
So
we don't.
no.
And I mean, and again, there is this visible rise in the need for empathy as a component of leadership, but it's confusing. I had a man who I respect deeply in a senior role say to me a couple of weeks ago, I don't like liking my employees. It worries me because I get distracted and I get conflicted.
It's
What a
okay.
wonderful, open, honest thing
Yeah.
to say. That was followed by, but I really like this crew. I really like them as people.
Yeah.
So I want to do good by them. I want to help them, reach their goals and dreams. But it's confusing because as a leader, I'm here to make the business work and make money.
Which is that kind of divorce of
Yeah.
the two things that
Yeah.
culture's taught us to do. Whereas if that leader had said to a group of colleagues, I really like you guys.
Yeah.
My job is to make money, but I know you're the right people to do it.
Yeah.
So we're all in it together. Wow.
And we have some leaders in New Zealand now who are doing that, and I have such admiration because it takes courage to stand up for your employees. It also takes courage to stand up for the business and make the
Yes.
kind of hard calls, again, around redundancies
Yeah.
and outsourcing. The world is shifting that sometimes these calls have to be made.
Of course.
And a leader who makes those calls and retains the ability to function, but they're hurting.
Yeah.
And at some point that comes out. And again, it's been shown that leaders who show vulnerabilities are not seen as weaker, they're seen as stronger.
That's right.
And they're seen as more desirable leaders.
Yeah.
We want to be led by people with feelings and with feelings like us. I bring you my skills, my energy, my passion. What do you give me?
That's
You help
right.
me grow.
What's that
You
relationship?
help me find fulfillment. You help me improve as a human being. And as a dream which my business has, that when a business sends its employees home at the end of their shift, at the end of the day, they go home prepared to be better mums, dads, men, women, whatever they are, and not worried, stressed, bedraggled, exhausted things.
Yeah. It's amazing the flow-on effect of that kind of work stress on life. And if we go home into a place where we're emotionally exhausted
Yeah.
and we are mentally exhausted and we are just tapped out, that's what our kids see.
Yeah.
I'm lucky enough with 14-year-old, 13, almost 14. She'll call me out on it too. Mom, close your computer. Stop with
Yeah.
the emails. Put that down. Let's go play.
We're seeing countries like France trying to stop emails after 6 p.m. There's the work done by Andrew Barnes and Charlotte Lockhart here with the 4-day week. I so adore that. I mean, it is hard for some organizations,
Yeah.
particularly when they're driven by perpetually unreasonable client needs to adopt that.
Yeah.
But clearly what Andrew has created is gathering traction around the world.
Yeah.
And I think it's about time that we put our focus on creating a healthy humanity above a healthier profit line. And we learn that caring for people actually makes more money.
Of course it does. Of course it does. I'm going to check our time.
I'm aware of that, yeah.
Yes. So, closing thoughts. Should we bring it right back around to what we were talking about, to kindness?
I think it begins with kindness. Kindness is also the gift that keeps on giving. Being kind triggers dopamine in our brains. We've had this story, gratitude, kindness. They work together. But deliberately being kind makes us feel good chemically.
Yeah.
So being kind to ourselves is kind of the foundation stone of being kind to others.
100%.
A lot of us are very good at giving and rubbish at accepting. That's part
Very
of the human
much
condition
so.
as well. Me too.
That is a hard thing to do, to say
but
thank you.
Working with
You
our
know?
clients
Yeah.
around, you need to have the presence and the strength to embed self-compassion.
Yes.
And again, it's this wonderful circle. There's a woman called Morley, a singer in New York. She has a song, actually called Woman of Hope. But one of the key lines is, feeling helpless, help somebody.
Nice. That's amazing.
Feeling helpless, help somebody.
Yeah.
So this perpetual circle of being kind, receiving, being kind, receiving.
Yeah.
It changes the state of a business. It changes the state of a human being.
Yeah.
And it has the power to change the planet.
I think that is a really, really good place to end. Thank you, Jerry, for being here. Thank you for your conversation. And I can't wait for our next Negroni date. Because
Too
imagine
right.
conversations like this, but with Negronis. Like, this is my life with Jerry. That's actually what this should be called, my life with Jerry. Because I absolutely love our time together. So thank you very much.
Cassie, the
Appreciate it.
kindness warrior, you are a blessing in my life. Thank you too.
Thank you. Bye.